Meductic, New Brunswick, population 100, give or take a few. It's a small riverside community not far from the American border. A beautiful spot, best known for hunting and fishing, and since 1982, the Sabian Corporation. It may seem like an unlikely spot for a world-renowned company, especially one as specialized as the cymbal business. But for founder Robert Zildjian, he wouldn't have it any other way. Zildjian is part of a family dynasty. His ancestors began cymbal making back in 10th century Constantinople, in what is now Turkey. In 1623, the family established the Zildjian Cymbal Company. How this American arrived here in New Brunswick, and how he's keeping the legacy alive, is a dramatic story. And it's one the dynamic 80-year-old is eager to share.
I was born in Boston, Mass, 80 years ago. And the family itself came over from Istanbul in the person of my father, 1907 or 1909. He wasn't too sure. But at that time, he had left because being a Christian Armenian in the midst of a bunch of Turkish people, it wasn't a very healthy situation, and he had a good head on his shoulders and started in on the candy business. 1928, as is the tradition, he became the senior male member of the Zildjian family. Therefore, it was his turn to start making cymbals. And he had first denied it as being anything comparable to what he was doing. He was in the candy business. So anyway, my mother, who was a Yankee, stepped in and said, the story is fascinating. We've got two sons. I think they should really be exposed to it. Get into the cymbal business, give it a trial. That's 1929. You had the crash. You had the 30s with the terrible depression, etc. One way or the other, the family managed to manufacture cymbals, manufactured a good cymbal that was dovetailed right in with the beginning of the swing era, the growth of the jazz era, and of course, as I was telling you, the percussion of the classical music era. So that sort of was a combination of my father's ability and stiffness and the good things that happened within the era. In the Depression, you wouldn't know, but during the Depression, people went out and had a good time to forget how terrible it was at their job or at home or at their lack of job. So the nightclubs burst and the big bands came in, and it was all a wonderful glamour thing that my brother and I grew up in, and we had to do it because it was part of our stuff. And then when did I start? Armin, my brother, had started previously 2 years ago. You started in 14 years of age on non-conflicting times of schooling. So summer vacation, weekends, in the melting room, making castings, getting into the whole thing, and that was that. And then we developed, you had the Second World War, Tom and I both in the service. We got through all that, came back home, and around 1968 we decided that this area would be a great spot to be within the British Commonwealth. Also, it would be a good spot with what I call jack-of-all-trades type people, which we still have working for us. And we opened up ASCO, AZCO, which was a branch of the Robert Zildjian Company. And ASCO exported to England, sold in the domestic Canadian market, which was and still is our number one export, only no longer export, customer. And also it allowed us to get into and underneath terrible restrictions in Australia, New Zealand, South Africa.
You were in the Commonwealth, so you could serve those markets.
The Commonwealth was solid. So that made ASCO go along very nicely.
In the late 1970s, Robert Zildjian's life took an unexpected turn. Following the death of his father in '79, his relationship with his brother and business partner Armand began to decline. The result would mean Robert, at the age of 56, would be forced to leave the Zildjian Company, take its foreign holdings, including the ASCO facility in New Brunswick, and start all over again.
Well, what happened there was, unbeknownst to me, I became, since I'm the younger brother, I became a minority shareholder. And I thought at the time that my brother and I, on equal shareholdings, would be voting the votes of my father's estate. Didn't turn out that way because the executors were my brother and his son. It had been changed behind my back from Armin and me to Armin and his son. So the next thing I knew, minority shareholder has fewer rights than a majority shareholder, and it got to the point where they were taking away certain parts of my job. I was the export man, I was the advertising, I was the marketing, I was quite a few things, the accounting and so forth. Ran a few overseas businesses for the company. All of a sudden, I was bereft of all of that. So I made an offer to my brother. I'll buy you for so much, or you buy me for so much, and we'll leave it at that. 3 years later, while lawyers became more wealthy, we settled on just about the same amount. The only difference was I ended up with a Canadian company, the Swiss company, and an Italian company. All of these they were going to spin off and get rid of, and we kept them going. But we had 15 workers at that time, and we were just a branch of the main Zildjian thing. I think we've done pretty darn well because we had the very best of the workers right up here. This maritime type of worker, when he comes to Sabian, he doesn't know anything about manufacturing cymbals. We have to teach him everything from the word go. But with people like Nort Hargrove and Dan Barker, these people got into the production thing. We took over everything that they had by way of problems, and I think I know that we make the greatest cymbal in the world today. We really do. I'm trying to be humble, but the hell with it. And we also, and this is indicative of our quality, we also make half again as many as they do down in Boston. So we're bigger.
Now tell me about the early days in Meductic, starting up a company from something very small and bringing it to the point it is today. Tell me about those early days.
Okay, as you see, well, you've done a lot of research behind my back. You know then that we signed off from Zildjian December 4, 1981. 82, we were not allowed to sell in our biggest market, which was the U.S. That's fine. We got along one way or another on export because I'd done export for years. But we worked with a good friend of ours, Roy Edmonds, out of Toronto, who was formerly in sales. We had a good man out of Premier Drum Company who was in sales. We got the sales thing going. While the sales things were first starting, I had to pitch in on the advertising, do a lot of the ideas that we started with, which was join the Sabian switches. The idea being switch from everything else and come back to Sabian. So join the Sabian switches was our first big slogan. That caught on, and we started getting big name drummers saying, hey, I know your stuff from the ASCO days. I want to get into this. So there's no doubt about it. ASCO gave us a good beginning. But the 15 men we had at the parting of the ways soon became 30, 35. We're up to 95 production workers now. And every one of them knows their job, can shift from one to another. There's a maritime feeling about this. I hate like hell to go back to Boston and try to run a thing down there. Excuse me.
Now, family is very important to you. The very name of your company is kind of an interesting thing, Sabian.
Yeah.
What does it mean?
Well, we were told we had to come up with a name that had no Z's in it, that had no reference to our old past, in order for us to quit Zildjian. So we finally decided that we'd think up a new name, which is not easy to do. And Willie and I, my wife, the two of us were in the car driving from here down to Boston one time, and we said, let's put our heads together. We've got to come up with a name. So she said something to the effect that we should come up with an anagram. And I said, that sounds good. And then we started thinking, an anagram of what? Canada, snow, maple leaf, no. And then I said, what about the kids? Because sooner or later, you know, we're going to kick off and they're going to get it anyway. So she said, all right, fine. So we kicked it back and forth. I don't know who finally came up with the two first letters. I think it was I, but she probably would say no. But anyhow, we took up Sally, S-A, Billy, B-I, and Andy, A-N. So Sabian became the new name.
Was born. Now you have 3 children who are all involved in the business in some respect.
Yes.
Do you ever give them advice about how to avoid problems in the future between each other and you know, generations to follow?
Oh, I think one of the biggest problems we had was my father, when he did pass on, was 92 and had really lost a lot of the concept of what was going on. I was running most of the business. My brother spent very little time there. But at the same time, when a trade show would come up, he was a good front, and he was good for that. Musicians loved him, and so forth, and that's true. He was good in that respect. But to run the actual business, I had done it. And I told my 3 youngsters, I don't want to see the one who's really going to be in here and do the job set upon like I was. So we decided we would name one of them as going to be the principal. Mm-hmm. And that's not the oldest. It's Andy, the youngest. But I think he has the wherewithal to get into the thing. I think Bill is almost, in many ways, as artistic as my brother was, but at the same time, a very smart and solid kid. So we've got 2 good factions that work along together.
And they're complementing each other.
And they know from the age, did know from the age of their early 30s, mid-30s, just how our thinking gelled on the whole thing. And my daughter thinks everything's fine. She's up here, lives in Woodstock, and she's Canadian all the way. So she's just happy to be the wife of one of our guys that works in production. And he's very good, John Teague.
When Robert Zildjian talks of his family, he doesn't just mean his children, 8 grandchildren, or his wife Willie. He includes the people of Sabian. We visited him at the company plant on the day of his 80th birthday party. Sabian employs more than 100 people, many born and raised in the area. And Zildjian is determined to keep those workers and his company rooted in Meductic. Now, some people would say that Meductic, New Brunswick is an unlikely place for one of the preeminent cymbal manufacturers in the world, or maybe the preeminent cymbal manufacturer.
It's the cymbal capital of the world. Yeah.
What motivated you to retain the property that you had here and decide this is where your base was going to be?
Well, we had trouble a long time ago with some of the help down in Boston. We thought that it was because of machine shop versus rolling mill and oven shop. The hours are different on the ovens because you have to control temperature. Machine shop is 9 to 5, in those days 8 to 5. And so I said, if we divide some of this up, we will come up to a lot more placid type of labor relation. So Willie and I went out and looked around southern New Hampshire, southern Maine, and there was nothing there. So the following October, we were up here hunting, and this was when we were putting in this dam that ruined the greatest salmon river in the world. But Willard Way, our old pal up here, he and I were sitting under a tree, and I said, Willard, you're running 3 crews, I guess, cutting in the woods and cutting for the dam. I said, do you think you could run a cymbal factory? And I just said it for the hell of it. And he looked at me and he said, absolutely. And that was the beginning. That's how we got onto the thing, because I had faith that he knew what to do and knew how to do it. He wasn't a drummer, he wasn't a musician, but he knew men and he knew how to control a production situation. So that's why we decided to open up here. Also, it was close to good salmon fishing, it was close to good deer hunting, and trout fishing was great before the paper mill guys came in and ate them all up.
So you might as well work where you love.
That's right.
Okay.
That's right.
How much do you think Sabian is a part of Meductic or a part of New Brunswick?
You know, there again, you have all these people that work here. Some of them come up to me and they say, one of the best things about Sabian is that I don't have to go to Ontario or Alberta or British Columbia just to make a living. I can do it in my own home province, and I love it here and so forth. And I think we've made an impression with that whole group with it around there. But I don't know much about what happens in St. John. I couldn't care less about some of these other places, because our place is Woodstock, the northwest corner of the whole thing. Terribly different from Maine, just over the border, and to the better, I think. And I'm quite happy with the way it is. What's our impression of, what impression have we made in there? I don't know, I think a lot of New Brunswick families now, when they turn on the television, they immediately start looking for the drummer and see if they see Sabian on the cymbals. And if they do, there's a certain gratification. If they think they get a gratification, wow, we really do. But we have, I guess we've entered into the daily lives of New Brunswick.
Zildjian estimates his company has more than a 40% market share, and the cymbals are played by musicians on nearly every continent. The New Brunswick factory produces more than 500,000 units each year. They range from the average cymbal designed for a school band class to the finest hand-hammered product used by professional musicians. Even after more than 65 years in the business, Zildjian expresses an excitement and passion about the product he's creating. How has cymbal making changed over the years for you? Is it a business that's evolving?
I tell you what's changed. Cymbal business has changed because music has changed. There have been a lot of crazy things. One cymbal company thought that they would impose on the public the fact that they could make red cymbals, blue cymbals, and this would tie in with your high school colors and so forth. That didn't really go over too well. But they at the same time came out with some terrific gongs, and because of some of the more modern composers, they've sold a lot of gongs, and that's improved their business. We've improved our business by coming up with so many different classical combinations of classical sound that goes all the way from composer to composer. We have composers today that are really crazier than Beethoven ever thought of being. But they're writing music and the people are playing it, and we have furnished the cymbals. When they come and say, you should do this, I want more highs, I want more body on the lows, we know what they're saying, and we do it. And that's changed our setup. In the old days, if you were in the Boston Symphony, Max Polster, what a character. He had one pair of 18-inch cymbals, and he said, that's enough for me, I can handle anything. The consequence was that the cymbals never were very important. He was succeeded by a young man named Tommy Thompson. Tommy said, I want to be the best cymbal player in the world. He and I went to work. When Tommy died, they had, I think, 12 or 15 pairs of different size cymbals going from 8 inches all the way up to 24 inches. And big sound to little sound. crotales, ting-ting things that you never saw before, finger cymbals that they use, E-bear, Forza call, great musical sound. These are the things that they've asked. They've said, hey, do you do this? Can you come up with something like that?
Tell me about some of the famous names that have made the trip to Meductic. You get some visitors.
Oh yeah, well we've had drummers that I don't know too much about because I'm not much of a rock and roll or heavy metal guy. But we've had up here Dave Weckl, who's considered probably the most important drummer today on the popular scene, and he's now a happy man with Sabian. We had Chad Smith, who is with a group.
The Red Hot Chili Peppers.
Thank you, dear. Wow. We've had him up quite a few times. He's a character. I tell you why I don't remember Red Hot Chili Peppers, because Chad is so much of a red hot character himself, you just forget what the heck he did. And you know most of these better than I do. I could tell you we've had Vic Firth, who used to be with the Boston Symphony. He's been up. And of course he's been an old pal anyway. We've had the head man at the New York Philharmonic, Chris Lamb. We've had Fred Hinger, who was with the Metropolitan Opera and so forth. We've had all of these various people over, and they've come up here in the backwoods, and we put them into the vault, which we call our storage room, and they go absolutely crazy.
Kids and candy stores.
At one time at Zildjian's, I had a top college man from the University of Michigan. I had Woody Herman and his drummer, and I had a rock and roll drummer all at the same time. And it didn't matter. They had something in common. Their music had nothing in common, but they were all musicians of a different ilk, and they enjoyed each other, had a great time.
What is the most rewarding aspect of this business for you? Is it being creative and seeing what different sounds you can make, or is it seeing the Sabian name out there and watching it grow and spread?
See, that's a toughie. You should have asked me this before. I would say this, look, what I enjoy seeing more than anything else is our cymbals being properly utilized in good music. And that to me is terrific, because if it's on television, your medium, we all like to peek in to see if the guy's going to hit it hard enough so you can see the Sabian logo. I love that. I like to see this thing grow. I think that one of the most delightful things about Sabian is that 20 years ago we were just ASCO, a little 15-man plant that did good work and so forth, but it was not an important part of the music field or the percussion field. Today it is, and I think that's gratifying.
Now you're celebrating your 80th birthday.
You had to get
and
that, didn't you?
By all accounts, you have no intention of slowing down.
Yeah.
Tell me about your daily life running this business. How active are you?
Oh, well, I go around and tell people I'm semi-retired. And Dan Barker, our president, became president, and the first thing he did was he took all my old business cards, ripped them up, and presented me with chairman. So I'm the chairman. I haven't got a board of directors, but if I did, I would be
You would be the chairman.
Yeah, and that's nice to know. And how is it by way of act? I get away, and I every once in a while, at my age, I think I ought to get a little bit of refuge from the day-to-day problems. They kind of make life too complicated for an 80-year-old guy, especially when you've been down those roads before. But I get so damn lonely and excited about things that they tell me on the telephone. You've got to come back. You have to see the people. You have to watch the looks in their faces. We've got youngsters upstairs in marketing that are beginning to see that things are getting better and better, and the enthusiasm, that's priceless. You don't want to sit on some beach somewhere and not participate in that. So that's hard to answer your question. I just don't want to be not a part of it, and I just don't want to be the daily labor.
Is there going to be a moment when you stop at maybe 90 and say, well, it's time for me to retire to my home in Bermuda? And is it Bermuda?
Yeah.
Is there going to be a point then when...
Oh yeah, that'll be when they say, may he rest in peace, and get hit in the belly with a shovel. Huh?